Hello and welcome to New England Authors with Kameel Nasr. This time we have a real special treat because we're in the middle of a writers' conference, and so we have a lot of writers talking about their works and what they're doing, and we're just going to go through and talk. My first guest here is Sheila, and Sheila is just a wonderful writer. Sheila Conley, a good friend of mine, and you've written so many books, so many series, mysteries and other things. What you working on now? What's your latest book?
Latest book came out this week. It's called A Late Frost, and it's one of the orchard mysteries set in western Massachusetts.
A cozy mystery.
It's a cozy mystery.
And define a cozy mystery for us.
Well, it's usually a small town setting, an amateur female sleuth, no blood, gore, violence of any sort on screen, often with a pet on the cover. But it is the female sleuth that ends up solving the crime and restoring harmony and justice to the small town.
Do all your books take place in New England?
No. Actually,
you have in Ireland too.
Yes,
Yeah.
I have another series set in Ireland, which the sixth one is coming out in January. I am not Irish, but my father's parents were, and I saw it almost 20 years ago and fell in love. And it was actually one of the first books I ever completed was set there. It didn't sell, but I kept the setting, I kept the concept, and Ireland is the quintessential small town, and everybody knows everybody else and their entire history.
Oh, that's a great place for a cozy mystery, like the English countryside as well.
So you find a body and you talk to a stranger and he says, "Oh yeah, his father was up the hill and he had a feud going with his neighbor," and and it feeds into solving the crime.
Oh, that's great. Now tell us about how many books do you have? Can you keep track of them, and how many different series do you have? Yeah.
I had to check. I actually did a count this week. I have 33 published, including one ebook series that's not a cozy, which is kind of fun. I wrote a short-lived glass-blowing series set in Tucson, which I'd never seen. I wrote the Orchard Mysteries. I wrote the Museum Mysteries set in Philadelphia. I write the Irish series, and I started a new series in June.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the museum series. What museum is it?
It really wasn't. It was the Historical Society, which is more a library archive than a museum, but I worked there for several years.
Oh, is that right?
And
Yes.
it's cozy in the sense that there are a lot of small communities within a big city. It's like, we all knew the same donors and the same supporters and the same members, so it's familiar.
Yeah. Now, is there a murder in every book?
Of course.
Yes.
Isn't that sad? Yes. Somebody dies. I try to stay away from the
gory.
The gory and even the planned ones. A lot of the murders are unintentional.
And the person who gets murdered, is it usually not a nice person?
Sometimes you don't even know when you find the body, and then you have to fill in the history of that person by talking to people. There's a lot of talking that goes on. There's not a lot of running around with guns and pursuing people.
Now, 33 books, that's a long time. Was your whole life been writing? Or
No, not at all.
When did you start?
2001. That sounds very silly, but
Wow.
after 9/11, I said, if you're going to do this, you should start now.
Wow.
What are you waiting for?
In such a short time, 30, that's like a book every 6 months or so?
I've done up to 4 a year. Well, when you start writing, you don't sell immediately. You have a lot of stuff that no one will ever read, but you learn. So I started in 2001. I got an agent in 2006. The first book came out in 2008.
Oh, so it took you like 6 years to get
which is
published?
pretty average, yeah.
It's pretty average to get published.
You learn
in
your
6
craft.
years.
You join organizations like
Like
Sisters
this.
in Crime or Mystery Writers of America. You talk to other writers.
And you have now a plan for other books coming out?
Oh, yeah. Well, there are 2 more under contract for the Irish one. There's the new series from St. Martin's. We haven't decided. Berkeley's been going through some strange times lately, and they may or may not continue.
The different publishers.
Yes, and you never know. But they did end the Museum Mysteries, but I'm borrowing a couple of the characters to put in the Victorian Village series, so they aren't going away.
All right. Well, it's really great to talk to you. Sheila Conley, author of 33 books and counting. And this is New England Authors with Kameel Nasr. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
our next guest is Adeline Ellenberg. Welcome, Adeline. Tell us a little about your book.
Well, my book is Eminent Crimes,
Which is right here.
and it's a legal thriller, and I write in the tradition of John Grisham. I am an attorney, retired now from the law, but now I'm pursuing my love of writing. This is my first novel. I'm working on my...
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm enjoying Crime Bake here.
Oh, good. So you're an attorney. You used your legal knowledge to write a thriller. Is it a murder mystery? What is it?
Well, yes, some nefarious things happen. It's based upon some actual law, the Kelo versus the City of New London case, which is about eminent domain, which you might think is a dull subject,
Right.
but it can be used in nefarious ways. And that happens in my novel.
That's like taking away someone's house because you want to build a railroad or something. Yeah.
Yes, yes, and it has gone up to the U.S. Supreme Court, so it's real law, but fictional characters.
And let me guess, somebody gets killed who doesn't want their house taken away or something like that. Yeah?
Yes, yes, and actually the case has implications for all of us because politicians could take your house and say, we want to make it into a bed and breakfast, and they have the right to do that now with the U.S. Supreme Court case as it is.
Oh, really?
Yes.
And they pay me for it?
Well, they would pay you for it at a price they set.
I see. That
Maybe
sounds...
the price you want.
It doesn't sound very democratic or anything, you know. So, that's it. And so, what got you to write?
Well, I write about, shall we say, the cracks in the law where I feel that there can be injustices to citizenry.
So you're a crusader.
I guess so.
Yeah.
I have represented citizens groups on a pro bono basis on environmental causes and so forth.
Oh, and where do you live?
I live in Bridgewater, Massachusetts.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yes.
Oh, that's a great place. Yeah, I used to have a
Yes, it
house
is.
there.
Yes.
Right near the state
The State University, yes.
And so, how long did it take you to write?
Well, I wrote it 4 times till I got it right.
Yeah.
So it took me 7 years, and I'm hoping
7 years for the first book. Yes.
for the first book, and I'm hoping my second will be quicker. It's been 2.5 years now, so I'm hoping I've learned enough that I can be quicker on the uptake the second time around.
Did you learn a lot from John Grisham?
Yes, and from these conferences, things like plot, structure, character, dialogue, point of view, voice, all of that.
Yeah. Oh, that's excellent. That's excellent. So, when you were an attorney, did you do like eminent domain cases?
Actually, I did personal injury, workers' comp, environmental on pro bono basis, a little bit of divorce, things like that. I did not do criminal law.
Oh, so that would still you have the legal mind and the legal mindset. And
Well, I remember it from law school, some of it, and I've had to do a lot of research, actually, on areas of law that I did not practice in. So
well, that's what lawyers do anyway, isn't it?
that's
Is it
right.
Research.
An
yeah.
excuse to get back to the law library.
Yeah. So, well, that's great to have you with us. The name of the book is Eminent Domain, Adeline Ellenberg. It's really good to...
I'm sorry, I have to correct you. It's Eminent Crimes.
Eminent Crimes. I'm sorry, Eminent Crimes, yes.
Thank you. Thank
Thanks-
you.
Thanks for being with us. And this is New England Authors with Kameel Nasr. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, this is New England Authors with Kameel Nasr. I have great pleasure now to have Dana Cameron with us here. Dana, thanks very much for being with us. And I just heard that you're an archaeologist, one of my favorite professions. Tell us.
It's sort of a dream job for 20 years.
Yes.
And then I had another chance at another dream job of writing, so I've been really fortunate in that.
Yeah, and then you took that and made a character out of it, made a book series out of it. Yeah, a mystery book series. Tell us.
I did. My first series, 6 books, were the Emma Fielding Archaeology Mysteries, featuring an archaeological sleuth.
Emma Fielding.
Emma Fielding. Yeah, it took me 3 books to realize that I'd made a pun out of her name.
Yes, of course. Yes, of course.
And then very recently, those books were optioned by Hallmark to make into a movie series. So I'm very
Aren't you proud of that?
I'm super proud of it.
Yeah,
It's very exciting. Very exciting.
Tell us about her. What kind of archaeologist is she?
Well, she does the same kind of work I did when I was in the field, which was historical New England archaeology. So she looks at sites around where we live now.
Around New England.
Yeah.
And the Viking sites?
No, I think the earliest she looks at is an early 17th century site.
Oh, so Europeans.
Yes, Europeans. The Viking stuff would be more towards Lenso Meadow, so not quite in her bailiwick, but you never rule anything out. You never know what might happen next.
Now, this is your latest one, 7 Kinds of Hell. That's a really interesting title. Tell us about this. This is not archaeology, right?
Well, it is a bit of archaeology. It's more urban fantasy thriller, though. The idea of that an archaeologist doesn't know she's also a werewolf, and she's trying to find out the origins of who she is.
She's a werewolf.
She is. Yeah. And she's finding out that there are other werewolves and vampires out there in the world.
Is that right?
But these are a bit different because they're secret superheroes that have been working to help humanity for years and years.
Now, what got you interested in the paranormal?
Oh, it was actually friends Charlene Harris and Tony Kellner, who you spoke to earlier.
Yes.
They invited me to read a werewolf story, and I'd never done that before. And once I started one, I couldn't stop. So about a half dozen short stories and 3 novels later.
And where did you read a lot of werewolf stories, or what? How did you get in this paranormal?
I hadn't. I'd read some, and the first thing I did as an academic, I went straight to my library and said, where are my books? Yes. And I realized I don't have any reference books on werewolves. Yeah. And it took me a good solid 15 minutes before thinking, okay, this is fiction. I can make this up. And so I realized that I was going to take it and twist all the different tropes about werewolves and vampires and put those in my books instead.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And this is this going to be a series, or is this the first, right?
That's the first of 3. 7 Kinds of Hell was followed by Pack of Strays and then Hellbender, which came out in 2015. And a bunch of short stories that I wrote around them to sort of tie the world together.
Where do you publish the short stories? In magazines?
All over the place. One in Alfred Hitchcock, several with Tony and Charlene's anthologies, and a couple through 47 North.
Yeah. And were you like a child writer? Or how did you get into writing?
Actually, I didn't start writing until I was working on a site in Maine, and someone came out with a metal detector. We told him to stop digging, and he pulled a gun on us.
Wow.
Yeah, and this is vacation land. No one was expecting that.
Yeah.
So a few months later, I was telling a friend about this and about the things that happen to you that are strange when you're in the field, and she said, you need to write this down.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, boom, I needed to write this down. So I started rather late in my career, and it's been a blast ever since.
Oh, that's great. Well, Dan and Cameron, it's really been a pleasure talking with you. And you're one of those people, I wish I was an archaeologist.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with me.
Yeah, okay. New England Authors with Kameel Nasr. Thank you. All right, we're here with Karen Olson. Karen, you are a mystery writer. Tell us what kind of books you write.
I write a suspense series featuring a computer hacker character who basically, in the first book in the series, it's called Hidden. She's on Block Island, and she's been hiding for 15 years, and someone from her past discovers her and wants her to commit the same crime she committed 15 years before.
Which was something to do with computers?
Something to do with computers, yes.
Yeah. And does she continue on in the series? How many books are in the series?
There's 3 that are out now, and 1 will be out in February.
And does she continue through that series?
She does. She does a lot of traveling around because she has to, every book she has a different name because she's a fugitive.
She was a hacker.
She was a hacker. Well, she's still a hacker.
She's still a hacker, but is she a good hacker or a bad hacker?
She is sort of in between.
Yeah. Now, this isn't your first series. You have other books. You've been writing for a long time.
My first book came out in 2005.
2005. So, and you have how many books now? About 6 or 8 or
with
something?
the new book that's coming out in February, that'll be number 12.
Number 12. Wow, that's a lot of books. And that's like one a year, right?
Yeah, I had a couple of years off in between series.
What inspired you to start in this 2005?
Oh, I read a lot of mysteries, and I thought I would try writing one. I was in newspapers for a long time, and my first series is set in a newsroom with a police reporter.
Were you a reporter?
I was a reporter, I was an editor, I was a travel editor, I was all sorts of editors.
So you've been writing all your life. You've been in words all your life.
I have been, yes. And I'm in publishing now, too, so that's my day job.
Oh, excellent. So you're completely into writing. So tell us a little bit more about the computer hacking world. Is it a complicated world, or a lot of characters, or what?
Well, a lot of the books are with this one character. She's a fugitive. She committed a crime. She stole a lot of money by hacking.
By hacking, yeah.
And each book, she's sort of trying to, come to grips with the fact that, she is a hacker and she knows what she's doing, but she is sort of recruited by the FBI eventually.
To solve
to help,
So she's one of these bad guys turned good, or something, whatever it is, and uses her skills in that kind of way. My publisher calls it the Black Hat series, and so Black Hats are, the criminals, but she's more of a gray hat. And did you have to do a lot of research about this, about how to computer hack? Can you hack yourself?
I cannot hack. I cannot even code. I don't know anything. I've done a lot of research online. I've watched a lot of documentaries. I watched one documentary about Bitcoin about 3 times so that I could try to understand it. I still don't completely understand.
Oh, you're not the only one. Yes, and yeah.
But the book that's coming out in February is mostly about credit card fraud and skimmers and what happens at ATM machines if you put your card in and there's a skimmer on it, and what happens with all of your card information.
Oh, I see.
Well, it all ends up in the dark.
I'm really looking forward to it. So tell us again the name of your upcoming book.
The name of the upcoming book is called Vanished.
Vanished.
And it's the 4th book in the...
Is that the one, the credit card one?
That's the credit card one.
Yeah, Vanished.
Yes.
Interesting. Okay. All right, we're speaking with Karen Olson. This is New England Authors with Kameel Nasr. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Okay, we're talking with Lee Perry now, and thank you very much for being with us, Lee. I see your new book, it is just coming out, The Skeleton Paints a Picture. Tell us about it.
Well, it's about an adjunct English professor named Georgia Thackeray, and she's working in an art school and teaching English to artists, and her best friend shows up.
Were you an English teacher?
No, but my daughter did go to art school. She just graduated, so I'm stealing all her stories.
All right, sorry to interrupt you. Okay, go ahead.
But her best friend comes to join her. Her best friend is a walking, talking skeleton named Sid.
Oh, so what age does this appeal to?
I hope it appeals to adults, but, it depends on if you have a sense of humor for bad bone jokes.
Oh, it's a skeleton. So what made you come up with this?
I don't know. A lot of friends of mine were doing paranormal stories. I'm good friends with Charlene Harris, who does vampire stuff. My friend Dana Cameron does werewolf stuff. And it's like, for some reason, no one was doing skeleton stuff. So
maybe you're going to have a new genre coming out with skeletons, yeah?
I think I may be a genre of one.
Now tell us, what does a skeleton do?
He can do pretty much, he can't eat or drink or anything because it kind of goes right through him. But he helps solve mysteries. He's very good doing the computer research.
He solves mysteries?
Oh, they solve crimes. There's a murder mystery.
I see. Who is the skeleton? Was it a person at one time?
Skeletons aren't born that way.
That's right, of course, yeah.
We all are skeletons under the skin, but that's different.
But does he have a name?
His name is Sid.
His name is Sid, of course. That was his name before when he was alive?
In the first book, which is A Skeleton in the Family, it delves into him solving his own murder.
Okay. Now, did you grow up as a writer, or when did you start writing?
I got my first rejection slips in high school.
Wow. And you've been writing ever since?
Pretty much.
And you've probably had a lot of rejection slips.
Oh, I've got plenty of rejection slips, but this is my 15th novel.
15th novel. What were your others about?
I did 8 books in a Southern mystery series. That was under my real name, which is Toni Kellner.
Oh, I see, yes.
And then I did 3 books around Boston about a freelance entertainment reporter.
Yes.
And I co-edited a bunch of anthologies with Charlaine Harris, and now I'm Lee Perry doing skeletons.
Lee Perry. Well, thank you very much for sharing your stories with us. And I really look forward to reading this because I've never read a skeleton book.
Not very common, I'm afraid.
All right. This is New England Authors with Kameel Nasr. Okay, welcome again to New England Authors with Kameel Nasr. I have the great pleasure of having Dale Phillips here. Dale, you're from Maine, right?
Yes.
You're right about Maine.
Yes, I grew up there, and I had Stephen King as a writing teacher in college.
Did you really?
Yes, absolutely.
What was that like?
That was fantastic. He's such an inspirational person that also focuses you on the craft of writing and the passion.
Exactly, yeah. And one of his books is one of the best books on writing is by Stephen King.
Yes, absolutely. I recommend that to everybody. On Writing is the book you have to read if you're interested in the craft of writing and trying to improve yourself to get better.
Yes, and one of the things you do is do audiobooks. Do you record them yourself?
I do not, but actually I've got some nonfiction books in the works that I'm thinking of doing those myself and see how they turn out to see if that works.
What's the genre of mystery that you write?
I write in the hard-boiled school of mystery. If you ever like the John D. MacDonald, Travis McGee series,
that kind. Yes.
I do direct homage to that in my series because I wanted the kind of books that I love to read, which is exactly what I grew up with.
And how do you get your inspiration for these? Do you have a main character? What's the story?
Yes, I've always loved Portland, Maine, and I use that as my setting. As the start. I always wanted to put a book there, and when the first one came out I said, well, there's more stories in Maine that need to be told, so...
Oh, there's a lot of stories from Portland, Maine, isn't there?
There certainly are, so it became a series very quickly.
But you moved here now. You live in the Massachusetts area. Yeah.
I've been down here for over 20 years, 24 years now. So.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Yeah. Dale's a good friend of mine. So, so tell us a little bit more. What's your latest book?
My latest book is A Sharp Medicine, the 5th book in the Zach Taylor series, the hard-boiled series.
Zach Taylor, that's a pretty hard-boiled name, right?
It totally is, and he's named for the president. And the response to everybody goes,
"Oh,
Zach
really?
Taylor?"
Oh, yeah, the president, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
so that's kind of a good nod there when you're using a character that has something else going for them.
Yeah, and what is it? He's a private investigator. He's a cop. What is he?
Actually, he's an ex-con.
He's an ex-con.
Yes, he had a very troubled life. He had a terrible tragedy when he was 16, and it always affected his life. It filled him with rage and guilt and grief, and he carried that through all his life and avoided a lot of emotional entanglements because of that. He didn't want to bring anybody else down.
Dale Phillips, now, how many books have you got, novels?
Well, I've got 5 novels in the Zach Taylor series, plus a different standalone book, which is a thriller. And I've got 10 story collections and nonfiction as well.
Do you write like every day?
I wish I could. I wish I had the time for that. But I have a day job. And so when people say they don't have time to write, I say, well, you've got to make it.
Yes, you make time to write. And tell us, were you like a kid? Did you start writing as a kid? How did you get to start at the beginning?
I did kind of pull out a few things, but it was really taking classes from Stephen King that made you focus and go, I could do this. This is a professional writer who actually likes some of my stories and some of the narration I do and tells me I have good ideas. This could do something, but it took a long time in between that and getting out my first book.
Yes. And was your first book a success?
Yes, but the thing is, the first book was not the first book I had published. The first book sat on a drawer. It took me 35 years to make that book into something good.
35 years.
And that was only after I published other books before then to learn how to fix that book.
And you write nonfiction too. Tell us about that.
Well, I've been on both sides of the interviewing desk, and I've seen people blow interviews in the first minute. When they walk through the door.
Job interviews.
Job interviews, absolutely. And I said, well, goodness gracious, I can certainly help people avoid the problems that make them lose a job before they've even opened their mouth to start talking.
Yeah.
And I can certainly help them tell their story better to get the job that they want.
Yeah, and that's your book about jobs. Oh,
And
okay.
I've got some other books coming out too to help people become an independent writer, to help people become a professional writer, to help them be successful in life, to help them learn how to win, things like that.
Oh,
So.
that's great. Okay. Well, Dale Phillips, thank you so much for being with us. This is New England Authors with Kameel Nasr.
Appreciate it very much. Thank you.